Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
Improve the financial heartbeat of your business. Increase profits, cash flow, and manage your business better. Call DKP & Co. on 03 9023 9370.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Another episode of Suffin just about ready to take off. State of Our Football Nation, George Danikian, Lachie Flanagan running the console. We're doing it live from our studios, our very wet studios in Docklands in Victoria. And the rain has been terrorising the east coast of Australia from, I think, Queensland all the way down. And we've finally got a decent dose. And it's impacted a number of businesses and a lot of people who've been wanting just to get to work.
It's been hammering it down today in Victoria.
Everything's been affected. The World Cup of Cricket has been affected.
Yeah, I can imagine. Hopefully the day's play tomorrow is safe because I'd be planning to watch it. But
well, let me tell you, it's Australia. And it's England.
Yeah, I'm acutely aware of that fact.
And I would have thought it'd be the curators would be thinking, we better lay out those plans for the Ark that were sent to us at the beginning of the year because we might need them.
Yes.
But look, if cricket takes place tomorrow, I'll go.
When you say the Ark, do you mean like Noah's Ark?
Yeah, Noah's. Exactly.
Yeah, it's getting to that kind of. I wonder if you could.
The rain today has been very heavy in Victoria.
It has. Luckily, the studio is bone dry. But
well, we are up on the 15th floor, which always helps.
It does.
You've had some wet weather that's impacted your home.
Yeah, pretty small scale. I had the power go down for a couple of days, which was no fun.
Huge encumbrance.
That's okay. I was able to seek refuge and watch my Premier League in the FNR studio, so it was all good.
As a reminder, as we have done for the last half a dozen weeks, State of Our Football Nation proudly brought to you by GIS, the Global Institute of Sport, which has a campus in both Sydney and Melbourne. And that is one of half a dozen they have around the world.
Yeah, so they're all sports specific. So there are sort of online classes mixed with campuses or places where there are physical, additional touch points in classes. The one in Victoria is the MCG, but there's a campus in Wembley, I think at Etihad Stadium, not in Melbourne because it doesn't exist anymore.
No.
The one in Manchester.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a whole bunch of sports specific degrees that you can do. I didn't actually realise this until this week, George, when I was just browsing for my own curiosity, not as a person from FNR, but just as a general consumer, that one of the most recent ones, which is the Masters in Football Coaching and Analysis, which I've spoken of my interest about that one before.
Yes.
You can have the whole thing done in a week.
I should commend you at this juncture of the program because last week we ended the program and I said to you, let's make a tip what's going to happen at the Melbourne Derby between Victory and City. And I went for Victory. You went for City and you got it right.
I did have a couple of pat myself on the back moments from the weekend. Although I did say I got the 1-1 draw, Western United.
Hey, that's good.
MacArthur, correct?
Yes.
Let's just not talk about the rest, By the
way, we've got a couple of guests on this particular episode.
Indeed, we do.
One will be the man that we've got very comfortable listening to football when he works on SBS. I'm talking about David Basheer, and he should be joining us very, very shortly. And another who knows the game and has worked in the game and has worn a number of hats over the past 20 years is Bonita Mersiades, who these days is also a publisher with Fair Play Publishing, which is her business, and she's very keen not only to showcase more good books, and of course there's a Christmas coming up, and what do we tend to do whenever we're short of ideas? We go, football book, it'll come in handy. Well, Bonita might give us a few ideas about what's going on and what might be an ideal good seller and a great gift. But more importantly, she's going to give us an insight into some of the programs that she's already planning. And there are some interesting projects that are in the wind that she'll tell us about. So Bonita joining us a little bit later in the hour, and David Basheer joining us very, very shortly to talk all things World Cup, because he'll be working at SBS, and the rights holders are SBS, as they have been for quite a long time. I think the rights holders since, officially since 1986.
You would know better than me.
Yeah, it just goes back. Your memory gets hazy, and sometimes you remember things a little bit differently. Yeah, certainly in 1990, Les Murray and Johnny Warren were very excited to be doing it in Italy for what was a tremendous World Cup.
One up on me, George, because even if you remember 1986 hazily, I don't remember it at all.
When did you arrive on this planet?
About 14 years after that. So 2000. So 14 years.
So you're having massive problems deciding when you actually descended.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean,
so when did you first appear?
I was supposed to be a New Year's Eve baby, so I was born on the last day, right before
Your mother's listening today, isn't she?
Probably, yeah.
She'll probably ring us and tell us.
I was supposed to be like the harbinger of doom, like pre-Y2K. This is going to be the end of the world on the date of my birth. But no, I was a couple of days late, so January the 3rd, 2000.
Wow. Before we go any further, I noticed that there was a statement by the Socceroos today.
Yes.
That came out. Very, very interesting timing. They came out en masse, and I noticed also Football Australia has come on board, and in unison they have also supported this statement by the Socceroos. We've got the statement. For those of you that haven't had a chance to hear it, here are some of the Socceroo family, the Socceroo team, and this is what they had to say as we have a World Cup only weeks away from taking place in Qatar.
Those of us have had the honour to represent our country, have had the opportunity to learn about the world and its people.
In the quest to qualify for the pinnacle of the world's greatest game, the Socceroos have played on almost every continent.
Throughout the Socceroos' journey from Cambodia in 1970, Hong Kong in 74, Scotland in 85, to Doha in 2022, we've seen the power of football and the impact it has on people.
I was there in 2005 and I saw what the game and what the World Cup means to Australians. I saw how the Socceroos can provide us with a sense of what we can achieve and who we can be beyond our own shores.
I was there in 2022 in Doha. Scoring that penalty was a proud moment, but I know it was all in service of a bigger cause, helping Australian football succeed on the biggest stage.
There are universal values that should define football. Values such as respect, dignity, trust, and courage. When we represent our nation, we aspire to embody these values.
As PFA members, we understand the power of collective bargaining and the fundamental rights of all workers to form and join a union.
Before players had won these rights, their careers in Australia were characterised by the absence of respect and dignity.
It is for these reasons we must speak about the situation in Qatar.
Over the last 2 years, we have been on a journey to understand and learn more about the situation in Qatar.
We are not experts, but we have listened to groups such as Amnesty, FIFA, the Supreme Committee, the International Labour Organisation, FIFPro, and most importantly, the migrant workers of Qatar.
We have learned that progress has been made both on paper and in practice. The kafala system has largely been dismantled, working conditions have improved, and a minimum wage has been established.
Whilst the reforms established in Qatar are an important and welcome step, their implementation remains inconsistent and requires improvement.
We have learned that the decision to host the World Cup in Qatar has resulted in the suffering and in the harm of countless of our fellow workers.
These migrant workers who have suffered are not just numbers. Like the migrants that have shaped our country and our football, they possess the same courage and determination to build a better life.
As players, we fully support the rights of the LGBTI plus people. But in Qatar, people are not free to love the person that they choose.
Addressing these issues is not easy, and we do not have all the answers.
We stand with FIFPro, the Building and Woodworkers International, and the International Trade Union Confederation, seeking to embed reforms and establish a lasting legacy in Qatar.
This must include establishing a migrant resource centre, effective remedy for those who have been denied their rights, and the decriminalisation of all same-sex relationships. These are the basic rights that should be afforded to all and will ensure continued progress in Qatar.
This is how we can ensure a legacy that goes well beyond the final whistle of the 2022 FIFA World Cup.
One that football can truly be proud of.
One that football can truly be proud of.
One that football can be truly proud of.
One that football can truly be proud of.
One that football can truly be proud of.
Australia, and we're just now a matter of days before the World Cup starts in Qatar. Joining us via Zoom, I think he's in Melbourne, or is he in a very, I'm just looking, is it Sydney or Melbourne? Where is he hiding? David Basheer, where are you at the moment?
Hi, George, I'm in Melbourne, downtown
you're in
Melbourne.
Okay, so you've got the big umbrella out?
I have, actually.
And tell me you're not going to the World Cup cricket tomorrow at the G?
Nope.
When do you leave? When do you head off?
16th, George. So we are heading off on the 16th in preparation for that first match. Obviously, when we get there, there'll be a couple of days of preparation with the Socceroos training and interviews, getting to France training as well, catching up with contacts, the go when you're at those international events. So I'm already bothering the main Denmark commentator, the one from France and Tunisia as well. I'm all over it, mate.
For those of you that don't know, David Basheer will be one of the key players in the SBS team that is taking off and will be delivering another fabulous telecast of the World Cup in Qatar. How many in the team, David, do we know yet?
There is a few. Neve Owens and Richard Bayless are our main hosts.
Yep.
Mark Bosnich is involved.
Excellent.
Craig Foster will be there.
So Bayless, we all know from his Optus experience, correct?
That's correct. And Sarah Walsh.
Yes.
Is also involved. Fahid Ben Kalfala.
The former Victory player.
Exactly, Tunisian international. Wore the captain's armband on one occasion, George, with Tunisia.
Very good. So you've got the inside running on some very good stories, David Basheer.
We'll see how we go. But obviously the biggest story is the Socceroos, and we hope, some of those fringe injured players can get back into match sharpness pretty quickly, i.e. Tom Rogic is obviously top of the list with...
Young Suter? Is Suter going to be a contender, you think? Harry?
I think so. He's had, two runs for Stoke in the youth team.
Yeah.
So, 74 minutes in the last one, I think, from memory. So, yes, he's looking good, but the club is stressing, but they can't fast track his preparation because Australia want him to play at the World Cup.
Yeah, nor should they. No, it's the worst thing is you're driven. There's a thing inside you that says I want to play. But the damage that he could do if he's not right will impact his career. And we wouldn't wish that, even if we want him to play in the worst possible way. Just take us back, David Basheer. When was your first World Cup?
It was as a journalist. It was as a journalist / commentator, France '98.
Wow, what a great World Cup that was.
Yeah, go back to those days. And I can remember I was actually doing an online piece with Martin Tyler the other night, George, and we were reminiscing about sitting in Bordeaux at the stadium, chatting before Italy took on Chile for that famous 2-2 draw that Christian Vieri, I think, equalised that day. And it was Marcelo Salas scored a double, the great Chilean striker. It was just amazing. It was pinch yourself stuff to be not only sitting next to Martin, who I've got to know over the years, but to be at a World Cup with SBS, and they took their biggest team to France '98. Of course, they did USA 94 and Italian 90, the classic World Cups. Their first World Cup was all the way back in 1986 in Mexico. They shared that with the ABC, if you can remember back that far.
Yeah. It was the one that we shared because there was the earthquake that had caused upheaval, and
That's
the
right.
ABC had hoped to do it, in its own without any support from anybody. But because of the earthquake and the timing, it changed things appreciably. And the ABC had other commitments. And it so happened that this other network that the ABC had no desire to do anything with, said, no, we're only too happy to support you. And it was a tremendous time. I can remember the energy. I remember the tournament very well. There was a young guy, you've mentioned him a couple of times, Diego Maradona, that was the one.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he did okay in 86, didn't he?
He certainly did. He certainly did. And he was the enfant terrible in 1990, wasn't he?
He certainly was. What's the most memorable moment that you have had in your time? Let's reflect for a moment before we go into what's planned for SBS and what we should be getting ready for. Now, I have a real belief that you're going to be streaming matches that don't necessarily go live. Is that correct?
Well, all 64 matches are live, George. So
wow, that's a commitment.
For it. Yep, it's exactly that. So November 21 until December 19, the final at the Lachie Stadium will be all on SBS.
So just humour me for a moment, David. If I want to see a particular game that won't necessarily be the featured game, all I go will be the on-demand platform at SBS and then select.
Those details are obviously going to be decided, but it's live and free across TV, online, digital and radio. So, yes, there will be some digital component to the matches, but join the club. We're watching football on digital all the time these days, aren't we?
Correct. Now, will we also, because, we've learnt in this last few years because of digital, will we be able to see an array of mini matches?
That I do not know. I'll be honest.
Yep.
Okay. But I assume that will be the case because we're a rights holder with FIFA and they provide us with a whole range of content. So
the reason I pose that question is because Pokuah, one of our producers, who's a huge fan and loves the game and will be working on the game in her own time and place, I'm sure, because of that commitment that she's showcasing week in, week out, tells me that she's hoping that SBS will be able to deliver some of those games that not many people will know about. But as a aficionado and a fanatic, she'll want to know that they're all there for her to peruse.
They're all there, mate. 64 matches.
That's amazing. That is quite some effort. When you consider how many games we first showed back in 86, and of course we had no streaming platform in those days. It was what you saw live or what you saw on delay that we had recorded and showcased. And we did. It was pretty remarkable when I look back at how much we did offer above and beyond what people had got very used to on the ABC.
I think back, and again, without sounding too nostalgic, George, which we can go down that track a bit too often, I think.
Yes, go.
Would you agree? I just think back then when there was, you didn't have a plethora of choice, so your diet was one direction, and you had to absorb everything in that direction. So I think for young people in that era, the messages were stronger in a lot of ways because they weren't coming from all these different directions.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so take me back. What's the most memorable moment of your World Cup experience?
Well, there's been many, but I would say calling the final, I got the opportunity to call the final in 2010. We all know that Martin Tyler's the voice of football, and he was working for ESPN in South Africa at that particular World Cup, and SBS gave me the great honour of calling that final. It was a long tournament because the Socceroos, as you can remember, or you may not, were the first team in South Africa. So I was there probably 3 days before they got there. So it was like an 8-week period away from home. And we got to Holland under Bert van Marwijk, tried to, kick the living hell out of Spain in that final. And they nearly got over the line. But if not for one Andres Iniesta, who was unbelievable in that final. But I just think the occasion, Spain winning the first World Cup crown, in South Africa too, it had a bit of a vibe of, a new frontier World Cup. We've all been to the European World Cups, and I had the pleasure of going to 2014. Another highlight was, obviously calling Australia v Holland in Porto Alegre when Tim Cahill scored that unbelievable World Cup goal. So I've been privileged, George. Like, I've had a great honour to call all national team matches in my time with SBS. And there's been a lot of great commentators before and after me too. So I just feel like I've been very lucky in that respect.
Boys' own stuff, when you reflect on it, some of those goals and some of those moments and some of those memories, super rich. And when you take us back, you are very true and very right when you say Africa was such a different. It was like everyone had stepped out of their comfort zone and had tried to do something so very different. I still remember the music of that World Cup. It was a wonderful woman who Shakira, who created some magic with that sound, and it captivated the world. And the tournament has done it each and every 4 years. Will it be the same this year after what we've had to listen to and endure over the last 4 years in terms of social commentary and everything else? David? He's frozen.
I think David might have frozen on us.
Is he frozen?
Maybe give him
he'll have to hit the reset button.
Maybe give him the chance to
come back. All is forgiven, David.
In a second. I mean, I want to talk about one of the moments that David mentioned before, just quickly as we get him back. Is that
there he is?
I wanted to know how far, the World Cup is obviously the pinnacle in terms of the memories, but how far behind did that Cahill goal rank? Because it's one of my most defining moments.
It's one of the greatest goals I've ever seen.
I was in year 10 at the time, and the school that I went to, out in Mount Eliza, it was one of the only soccer people in my year level, and it was that Cahill goal was the first thing that permeated the kind of...
It was exhilarating.
It cracked the footy bubble. I remember thinking at 3 a.m, I must be the only person in my whole school who's awake for this moment. And then out of nowhere, I receive a text from my footy nut Collingwood supporting friend going,
mate,
holy, did you see that goal? And
well, David Basheer is back. It must have been this inclement weather that caused that freeze. Can you take us back for a millisecond? And I know we promised to move on, but I just want you to take me back to that moment. How special was that goal? And you had no inkling he was going to do that. Surely.
No, but just remind me too, because my memory is pretty bad. Ian Robbins scored moments before, didn't he?
Yeah, it was from kickoff, and then Ryan McGowan, I think, was the one who launched the long ball towards Cahill.
So he switched with a huge diagonal.
Correct.
And I remember looking down at my notes at Robin, because we were just sort of, completing that part of the call.
Yeah.
I looked at Fozzie and he sort of nudged me a little bit.
In other words, say, check this out.
Check this out. And so at that point, Ryan's launched the diagonal. And I saw, when you see a striker or a wide player peel off.
Yep.
And I thought, he's hit this ball really well. And Cahill postured his body. And that's when I sort of thought, well,
oh my
he's
God,
he's going to hit it first time here. And, look, I think even if you asked him honestly, if he had 20 swings at that, he couldn't have struck it any better.
David, you know the beautiful thing about sport? You only have to do it the once. because the memory, as we've got a young man who loves the game, lives the game, and he was a youngster at that moment, and he'll never forget it. And that's the gorgeous, power of sport. Those golden moments are just that. Whether it's Norman May calling it, whether it's David Basheer calling it, we should have had that 30-second call of David Basheer just to replay it and see if you could mimic it for a moment.
We've probably got some in the archives.
Yeah, I reckon we have got it. But it was a special moment. It was world class. It was a worldly they talk about today, and it means something out of this world. There are players who do it more regularly than others, namely Neymar, namely Messi, Ronaldo. What are you making of the Ronaldo brouhaha at the moment going on in Manchester?
Well, I think he probably wants to get out of the club. I think that was the storm out up the tunnel moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was that a little signal to say, get me out of here in January? It's pretty clear, but look, he's got a bruised ego. We understand that, and I think it's a reflection of the way modern day football now is defending from the front and the back. He hasn't got the capacity to do what Erik ten Hag wants a striker to do now, and that's exactly why he's not playing. And it's sad because there's a lot of pundits in the UK, and I've heard them say that they believe he's still at his age a lot better value than some of the other players that ten Hag is rolling out, but. You know what? Everybody's got a use-by date, George.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the thing is that man on man, give him that moment, he'll score more often than he'll miss. The difference is, does he get there as often as he used to? Therein lies another story. Okay, let's get back to this. SBS are the official rights holders. They're sending a team. Do you know where you're staying? Do you have any idea?
It's close to the Al Janoub Stadium where Australia are playing all their 3 group matches, and that is 20 kilometres away from Doha. So, look, I don't know, George. We've got a hotel which is a bonus because a lot of people can't get accommodation.
Oh, look, we should explain. We should explain that what they've done in Qatar is revolutionary and extraordinary, and one of the reasons for that is because they've got more money than more people than they've ever seen. They've built these magnificent stadiums. They're air conditioned, but they've also put trains, super fast trains, to all the grounds. So there's a distinct possibility that in one day you'll be able to see
some people will be able to get to
many of the games that are putting on live, which is unheard of, David Basheer.
Yeah, does that give you an inkling, David, to potentially, I've wrapped up the Socceroos game, I might just go catch the late fixture on the train?
Well, just ease on down the road.
Especially you with your pass. You'll have your World Cup rights holders pass. That's your all access pass.
No questions asked.
Yeah, exactly. No questions for Basheer.
I think that's a very, very good suggestion. I think a lot of commentators, journalists, they'll be doing that. They'll be having a look.
Be a very quick wrap at the end of the broadcast. After the next game.
Just quite seriously, you'll be calling the games. Are we going to have a preview shows and vignettes and post-game programs as we have had in the past, or are we doing something a little more different?
Yeah, I don't want to sound noticeably vague, George, but all that, because you've known me for a while and I can be like that, but all that will be announced. One thing I didn't mention is Harry Kewell is part of our broadcast team.
Get out of here.
So that, that is happening.
That's fantastic.
And we're very, very excited to have him part of the team. He's obviously part of Ange Postecoglou's coaching staff and learning a lot at Celtic. He's got very strong views about the way the game should be played. I believe he's in the top 2 or 3 greatest players we've ever produced, and there's no doubt about that, obviously. But it's very exciting to have him as part of the team.
I remember him as a young player at the MCG when he just announced himself with some truly wonderful play, and he would go on to become the young footballer of the year, the junior or the young footballer of the year in Britain in the EPL all those years ago, and doing it for Leeds. he was a prodigiously talented player who never really got to see him. That one World Cup where I thought he was going to be absolutely dynamic and breathtaking to watch. He was denied that opportunity, wasn't he?
And you know what? That story, I asked him about that because we've been doing a few Zoom.
Oh, yeah?
We've been watching Champions League football together, would you believe?
Bravo.
So it's not bad watching I watched Barcelona Bayern Munich this morning with Harry Kewell. That's not too bad, is it?
That's pretty good.
Pretty exciting.
Now you've made Lachie and I and Pokuah feel pretty ordinary.
I mean, I was watching it in bed, so I'd much rather hear from Harry.
Let's not go there. You were saying, David?
No, but what he was saying was incredible. Obviously, after the Brazil match, they had the front up in Stuttgart to play Croatia for that the chance to qualify, which they got through. He scored a goal. He was one of our best players in that match. Australia's football conscience really was born that day, I think, in a lot of ways in the modern day. He's gone away. I said, when did you find out? When did the foot start? Because he obviously was ruled out for Italy in the round of 16.
Yep.
He said, mate, the next day at breakfast, I was fine. The following day, I woke up and I just felt my foot and something wasn't right. And it was one of those freak occurrences. Was it septicemia in the foot or some incredibly rare condition that he doesn't know how to this day he picked up? And it was just, he plays against Italy and we arguably win that match. And I think we probably do if he's at his best.
What a journey that would have been. But I'm remembering the time when we were denied, the Socceroos were denied that opportunity at an infamous game at the MCG. Remember?
Against Iran, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was the one, if you remember, in the first leg at the Azadi Stadium in front of 110,000 people as an 18-year-old, he scored a World Cup qualifying goal. Like, you talk about boys' own moments.
Yeah.
The kid's 18. He's gone to as an apprentice as a 15-year-old to Leeds. Unbelievable rise in those 3 years to become an international footballer. And he spoke about that. I hope he shares some of those stories. But obviously it's about the class of 2022, but you'd be remiss not to reflect on his career and, the golden generation of the Socceroos in 06.
There's an 18-year-old that could be going. His name is Garang Kuol. What do you think about that? Is he a chance to be in the team?
Look, I think he's definitely a chance to be in the 26, but I don't want to sound negative towards precocious youth because I think he will end up becoming an unbelievable player. But I think personally it's come too quickly for Garang, and you're only really going to get the choice of taking how many wide players? Like, okay, Marco Tilio's not doing himself enormous favours at the moment, in my opinion.
What do you put that down to? Because the talent is seriously there. Has he gone backwards? Has he gone backwards?
He hasn't gone backwards. He's sort of gone. He's just simmering at the moment, George, waiting to do something. And I think Jamie McLaren's not as gifted, but he's more consistent. So,
do you know, if he had scored a goal last week in the derby, it might have opened.
I think he's being impressive with that headline grabbing because what everyone the sort of headline that came out about Tilio was obviously the miss against New Zealand, which was a glaring one. But I don't think since then in the A-League he hasn't really put that wrong. He hasn't righted that wrong because he's had chances against Western
United and Victory. Jamie Young denied him almost 2 goals in that game.
But unfortunately, those misses seem to be what's sticking out in the consciousness at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
So here we go. So SBS on the road to Qatar. You've got Harry Kewell joining you, which is just fantastic stuff. You won't know your schedule until you get there, I suppose, or it won't firm up until then. When do you call your first game? Do you know?
Yeah, it's Australia v France.
Okay.
So I'm doing the Socceroos matches.
And what time of the day is that going to be available to us?
Well, that's a really good question. Let me just go to my notes on my iPhone, George. So the first match, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lachie, because you'll know this, 6 a.m. Wednesday, November 23, Australia v France.
You've got it in one. I was actually just looking at the second of the Socceroos games, which is our time, 9 p.m. Tunisia up against Australia. You could probably make it to one of Poland, Saudi Arabia, or France, Denmark. That's the later game, so that might be in play for you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And the third one, hopefully was still alive at that point. 2 a.m. Thursday, December 1, Australia v Denmark.
Gee.
Yeah.
Do you know, there's we can say whatever we like. We're at the World Cup, and there's going to be some history made. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could jag some results that resonate and shake up the country? Look, David, let me just say we're both envious. Even Pokuah is very envious of what you're doing, but we're also very thrilled for you, and we wish you every success. Good luck to the entire team. May it go seamlessly, and more importantly, may it be brilliant football.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Lachie. I really appreciate it.
David Basheer joining us on FNR, giving us a glimpse of what the SBS team has got planned, and breaking the news, as he promised to, that Harry Kewell will be part of the SBS team at Qatar for the World Cup. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we catch up with Bonita Mersiades, who has also had a tremendous insight over the years as to what Football Australia is all about, and more importantly, some of the football teams that have made an impact. And I think she was managing some of those Australian teams. But for David Basheer, what a fantastic opportunity! And I think you've put something in his head. He may well finish the first game and then think to himself, a couple of games I might sneak in.
Look, if I was in his position, it would probably be on my mind as well.
Hey, listen, super fast trains, all access pass, David Basheer, will to travel. It'll be just magnificent. Yeah. That's great stuff. Okay, Bonita joining us very, very shortly. We'll take a break. This is State of Our Football Nation on FNR. George Danikian, joined by Lachie Flanagan.
Improve the financial heartbeat of your business. Increase profits, cash flow, and manage your business better. Call DKP & Co. on 03 9023 9370.
Ever wanted a career in football? At the Global Institute of Sport, you can now study a master's degree in football business or football coaching and analysis right here in Australia. GIS is the largest provider of sports degrees in the UK, with campuses at Wembley and Etihad Stadium. Learn online with unique access to the iconic MCG and a big-hitting Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
Since 1998, Lanco Group has been providing superior civil engineering solutions and advice to developers, local government and service authorities across Australia. Lanco Group is known for delivering sustainable, efficient solutions. By working closely with clients, Lanco Group is able to meet the complex infrastructure requirements for residential, commercial and industrial developments on time, on budget. Find out more at lancogroup.com.au. Lanco Group, your business partner for engineering solutions.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. George Danikian along with Lachie Flanagan in the studios, the very wet, very damp studios in Docklands in Victoria. And we're heading via Zoom to Sydney to catch up with someone who has loved the game, has lived the game, has had an opportunity to travel the world watching the game and supporting Australian football for an awful long time. She still supports the game in so many ways. She's been the chair of Women in Football. She's the publisher of at Fair Play Publishing and has managed to create and publish some of the finest sporting books that you can read. And with Christmas around the corner, Bonita, I want to know what I should be out there having a look to buy and purchase for those people that I know love the game and would consider it a real treat to have the book in their lounge or in their library. Bonita Mersiades, welcome to FNR.
Thanks, George.
You've had a very, very busy last month or so. How did the book launch go last week in Sydney?
Look, it was a fabulous book launch. It was a non-football one.
Yeah, one of the rare non-football ones.
Yeah, we do have a handful, less than a handful of non-football ones. And this one was about, but it was sort of football related in that it was a migrant story about a family who had come here in the early 80s and basically set up almost the first Indian restaurant in Sydney.
Wow.
And how they've built their business, how they've built their empire. But the real coup de grace in it was that it had also 18 recipes from their silver service restaurant.
Oh.
So if anyone likes Indian food, it's a great buy.
So
how did the launch go? It was very Bollywood. It was
well, we should add.
It was loud, it was colourful, and it even had a cricketer. I
was going to say you had Steve Waugh there. You don't muck around. When you go to the top and you grab someone, you happen to get one of the biggest cricketers, Australian cricketers, in the Indian world. I mean, they love him over there. And can I just mention that the biggest community, the fastest growing community in Australia is the Indian community?
Yeah, it is. And yes, they do love him. But I have to say that when it comes to big name launches of our books, I would probably argue that the biggest was Ange Postecoglou.
Oh, yes.
We discovered him before Celtic. And he launched a lovely book by Trevor Thompson in 2018 called Playing for Australia, the first Socceroos, Asia and the World Game. And it was about the history of our involvement with Asia, which was actually very early on in our history. And, of course, at that time, Ange was coaching in Japan in the J-League and was just back from a break. And, he had read the book, was happy to talk about it, and happy to talk of having won the Asian Cup, was happy to talk about our engagement with Asia.
He has advanced his profile in a very meaningful way with his involvement and his job at Celtic. Do you think he can achieve what he wants to achieve, and that is make real inroads in the Champions League next time that Celtic makes it there? Or are they in a very tough place because they can't sort of play with the big boys in terms of the dollar? They can't buy the sort of players that most of the other clubs in the world on that stage are buying or building.
Yeah, it's a tough ask, of course. But, at the end of the day, football's a 90-minute game. They play it over two legs and anything can happen. I mean, I hate to sound like a bunch of cliches.
No, but they work.
But, and you know what? Ange is a very good man manager. He not only, can deal with the tactics, etc., on the field, but he sells belief and self-belief. And so, I would think anything is possible, and that's certainly the mindset he would be taking into it. He wouldn't accept anything less.
We were just talking to David Basheer, who tells us that they're leaving very soon. He'll be part of the SBS team. Very excited to also announce that Harry Kewell will be part of the SBS broadcasting setup, which is, a special insight. And Harry, of course, these days spending an awful lot of time with Ange Postecoglou.
Yes, he is. And I think it's fantastic to see that Ange is sort of taking on younger coaches from Australia and I guess mentoring them in some respects. And, Harry's a great footballer, obviously interested in the coaching side of the game. And I think it's good to see someone like Ange taking him under his wing like that.
Now, you've got another opportunity. You were telling me, I think it was a week or so ago, you've got Ange Postecoglou again coming up in an event.
Oh, no, we
no?
don't. No. I think Ticketek do, or Ticketmaster. They have an evening with Ange Postecoglou, but
right.
we don't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint.
Okay.
But we do have.
Haven't you got a football writers week planned around those games that will feature Ange towards the end of the year?
We certainly, in November, on Friday, November the 18th, we're having, it's World Cup month next month. We're having a World Cup book month. And
Fantastic.
Next month we're launching 3 football books. One is a fiction. Yeah. One is a fiction called The Gaffer, which is a really humorous and gentle read, sort of Ted Lasso meets, I don't know who you'd say, Ted Lasso meets almost sort of one of those old British comedies.
Yep.
There's a memoir written about a man who was a kid when the Argentina 1978 World Cup was on, and it traces not only the history of the World Cup from 1978 to 2014, but it's a memoir, so it traces what the change he went through, so the social change, the football change, and his personal change.
Wow. And
last but not least is the second edition of the Encyclopedia of Socceroos, the Centenary edition, which is completely updated to 2022 by Andrew Howe. And
Stato at his best, huh?
Yeah, it also has 325 men who played non-A internationals for Australia. Andrew makes the point in his introduction that the reason they were non-A internationals was because for a period no one played Australia because we either not considered not good enough, or we could only get games against club sides or make-up sides.
Well, we were expelled for a number of years, weren't we, from FIFA?
Exactly. And so, but it doesn't lessen the efforts of the achievements and the the skills of these people who nonetheless played for Australia under Australian colours. So these 325 men are in there too, and there's some great stories amongst them. E.g., you'll learn that Australia had a player who was born in China to Russian parents.
Hello.
Yeah.
We are multicultural in no mean way, eh?
Yeah,
that's a great story.
There was one guy who played at age 22 in his one and only game, and he then went off to the Second World War and was killed in a plane accident the following year in New Guinea. So, there's all sorts of great stories amongst those 325 people, as well as updating for everyone else who's in it. And it's amazing to think that more than 950 men have donned the green and gold, or as it was originally, pale blue and maroon.
That's right.
For Australia. It's fantastic.
Bonita Mersiades is our guest on FNR's State of Our Football Nation. Bonita, we have always talked about our history. We've talked about it. Why aren't we very good at remembering it, or more importantly, recording it? What has been the problem in the past? Because I know that you have done an awful lot of work, and there have been a number of others who've come up with tremendous football tomes that are absolutely worth having in your library or having in your home. Why are we now suddenly, is it because of people like you, the passion that you have for the game, and how important it is to actually record it in a fashion that is easy to consume?
I think in terms of I wouldn't say there was a lack of interest in history so much as it's a very niche group. And even now it's probably niche. More people are interested about the here and now than where our history comes from. However, the reason, one of the reasons why I started Fair Play Publishing and started publishing books about our history and the culture of our game is because they stand the test of time. Yeah. In 50 years' time or 100 years' time, when some young student or university student or something is doing a thesis and they want to look at some history about football in Australia, it's written and we've published it. And the legacy of those individuals, whether they be Andrew Howe or Trevor Thompson or Nick Groth or Peter Kunz or, all of those authors who put years and years and years of research into their work, Matthew Hall's another one, it stands the test of time and it's there forever.
You do a tremendous thing each and every year, and that is the Football Writers Week. That's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year, and I think that is also a testament to the energy that you're pushing into that field of interest. We've got Simon Hill now putting his hand up. You've had Craig Foster, I think, in your efforts to hold the program in was it Wollongong or Jamboree? You've had, who haven't you had? I mean, as you said, Matthew Hall, you've had Simon Hill, you've got Craig Foster, and they all love the game, and they all understand how important it is to tell the game and to offer the game up in a fashion where it's easy to consume. And I think not enough people read. We certainly don't read like we used to. We all seem to be conditioned now to pictures. So unless there's an active component in the book that you can sort of scan, and it opens up, a portal that allows you to watch the highlights that occurred in the 1976, tournament or the 1980s. It seems to me that they don't move to get that excited. Are you finding that out, or is it, if it's well written and it captures their imagination, then you'll get the results and get the sales that you need?
I think no, not everybody's a reader. It's whatever the genre.
The way we process, The way we process.
We all deal with information and gather information differently, and not everyone's a reader. So, you hope that somewhere along the lines one of your books captures the imagination of someone who likes to read it. Then again, there are some people who will read every book about football that's ever written. And I can, one of our authors, in fact, is in that category, and that's Jason Goldsmith, who's on FNR. I think he has one of the best libraries of football books probably in the world.
How fantastic.
So, there are people like that, but then there are people who might just capture their imagination. But it's funny you should mention, having this interaction. One of the books we published last year was a fiction by Texie Smith called Anna Black, This Girl Can Play. Yep. A really courageous piece of work, because it's about the protagonist in it is a young woman who plays for Sydney FC and Melbourne City and the Matildas, and she's in the 2023 World Cup. So one, it's throwing forward, but two, throughout that we have the match reports of every game that the Matildas play in the 2023 World Cup. And we've got a QR code in the books, and you scan the QR code and you go to a website which has the match reports. So we actually have tried a few different things like that. But, getting back to the Football Writers Festival, it is getting it is a lot of fun. We're doing it for 3 days next year, in the few days just before the 2023 World Cup kicks off in Sydney. And we've already got lined up some international writers and journalists, as well as, the people that we know and love in Australia.
Can people book for that now?
We're opening up the ticket packages for that in November, and that will include, a 1-day pass or a 3-day pass, those sorts of things.
If they want to pursue and find out some more, how do they go about that?
footballwritersfestival.com.au.
Fantastic stuff.
And we, if they subscribe to that site, we'll be adding information to it as we go.
Going back to something we were talking about earlier regarding the importance of these books, I think something that else that is crucial in the publication of the history of the sport, it doesn't just give us a better understanding of what's happened, but I find in a lot of instances, and I'm glad you brought up my co-host on the Oz Football Hour and Jason Goldsmith up, because it works perfectly. It gives us a better understanding of what's happening in the present game as well, and we see how many cycles and concepts have repeated themselves throughout the history of Australian football. And I mean, one of Jason's books that he co-authored with Lucas Gillard, the Be My Guest, chronicles that story of Australian guest players throughout the years, and that is still, in the modern day of the A-League men's, a strategy that we are very much pursuing. And I see that book now is having a little international tour in the coming months off to Manchester as well, which is quite exciting.
Well, it is really exciting for Jason and Lucas, and well done. Be My Guest is a great read. And you're quite right, history repeats itself. And there's quite a few books, even though you wouldn't necessarily term them as the sort of hard history, like, say, a Playing for Australia. Be My Guest is one. Matthew Hall's If I Started to Cry, I Wouldn't Stop is another. Philip Mikalev's Quote Unquote.
Yes.
There's quite a few in that sort of way that are not hard history, as I said, but there's a whole lot of lessons to be learned from what has happened in the past. And we still have the debate about guest players. Matthew Hall has a bit in another book of his called The Away Game about some of the issues that can besmirch fans of the game, which we saw recently in relation to the FA Cup. So, there's some really good reads in that. And for someone who loves to know about everything that the game has gone through, some of those reads are fantastic, really fantastic.
Do you think that the news of the past week, where some of the sporting codes have raised the rather complex problem as sponsors, and we saw the incidents of the Australian netball team basically saying to their head honchos, we're not happy to support that particular sponsor, and then of course we saw that sponsor withdraw from representing the code. Are we likely to see more of this or less of it? Because companies or businesses will take a different look at the game and the sport that they want to support.
I think we're likely to see more of it. And a great example of that this morning was with the video
from the Socceroos
by the PFA with the Socceroos. Yeah. And I think it's great to see sportsmen and women taking a stand on social issues which are important to them. One of the things that I said back in sort of 2011, up to 2015 was that it was a shame that more players were not interested in those issues. So I think it's great to see that. The difficulty for sport is to find the sponsors who can fill that gap if the sponsors are not acceptable to the players. Because on the one hand, all of the players want to get paid more.
Yep.
In terms of women's sport in particular, they want to be more professional and they deserve to be paid more.
Yep.
But you need to find the sponsors who can fill that gap. So, for every Gina Reinhardt or every Hancock prospecting, what is the alternative?
Yeah.
And that's where I guess the sport governing bodies need to work closely with their athletes and vice versa to get that balance right.
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right, what's the book that I should be hunting for Christmas?
Oh, I can't single one out.
Give me your top three. Give me your top three.
Look, obviously, in terms of the great, the top three for Christmas, I'd say the Encyclopedia of Socceroos Centenary Edition. Yep. It is a book that celebrates our centenary. Another one is Burning Ambition, which came out in the middle of the year about the first tour of the Socceroos in 1922, and for if I can sneak in two more for two light reads. One is The Gaffer, which is really very humorous, and all I can say is Macarthur Bull's Visitor today has some relevance to that. Their big name visitor, Sir Alex Ferguson, has some relevance to that. And last but not least, if you want to sort of wonder whether fact is stranger than fiction or fiction is stranger than fact, read Game by J.J. Rose. It's about the race to win the World Cup in 2022, but it's a fiction. Or is it?
Now, before you go, we know that the Women's World Cup is getting closer and closer and closer. You were part of Women in Sport. Women in football, rather. How do you feel? Are you getting very itchy, very comfortable, or very nervous, or all of the above?
All of the above. I mean, I think it's absolutely vital that the Matildas, they really need to make the final on home soil, in my view. I hope they do, and I hope, I know that, well, from what I can see, Football Australia is doing everything they can to back them to get to that. Having said that, it's a great opportunity on so many other levels. I think it will shine a light on the game for the 6 weeks that it's on, and it's the responsibility of everybody in the game, from the bottom up and the top down, to make sure that light continues to shine, that it's not just a circus that comes into town and we all have a great time and then we forget about it. Yeah. There are some long-term systemic issues still to address in football, and I just hope that the Women's World Cup doesn't sort of gloss over them and we leave them to sort of not be addressed at all.
So we want a lasting legacy, in your own words.
Yeah, we want a lasting legacy across the whole game.
Yeah, yep. Bravo. Bonita Mersiades, as she always does, fierce, honest, and tells it like it is. And she's also doing some fabulous work with some great books. Not all football related, but most of them are. Fair Play Publishing. If you are looking for a gift and a gift idea, just check out that inventory that Bonita has.
Well, at the very least, I'll be hoping for one Fair Play Publishing book under the stocking from my co-host Jason. Just a copy would be my guest. That would be great.
All right. So Bonita, just whisper to Jason not to forget his co-host.
I will do so.
Now I have to get a gift for him. Oh, that's a problem. I have time to write a book.
Bonita, thank you so very much for joining us and giving us an insight into some of the great books that are out there, but also giving us an idea of how you've seen the game and how it's played its role in our lives for the better part of the last 40 years. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, George. Thanks, Lachie. See you later.
All the best. Bonita Mersiades joining us on FNR. Another episode of State of Our Football Nation almost in the can. Until next week, what have you got for me? What's your last little tidbit before we go into another weekend of football?
Oh, that's a very good question. I will have my eyes peeled this Sunday for Melbourne City, Wellington Phoenix, only because I'll be there. There's no other reason. And George, it's the penultimate weekend of Premier League and of A-League before the split.
I almost can't get my head around that there won't be any EPL for a month and a bit.
It's very strange, isn't it? I mean, there's a good reason for it happening.
We know the reason. But
yeah, it's the World Cup has it certainly snuck up on me, that's for sure.
Until next week.
Farewell.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.